Rosa Finch had coffee grounds under her fingernails when the most expensive suit she'd ever seen walked through the door of Maple Ridge Diner, and she knew instantly that the man wearing it didn't belong in her world. He paused at the entrance, his dark eyes scanning the small-town establishment with what might have been curiosity or confusion. Rosa couldn't tell which. She was wiping down the counter, her apron stained with syrup from the morning rush, her dark blonde hair escaping its ponytail in wisps around her face. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, the dead zone between lunch and dinner when the diner was mostly empty except for old Pete nursing his 3rd cup of decaf in the corner booth. The stranger's suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to broad shoulders that suggested he actually used a gym membership instead of just paying for one. His hair was dark, styled in a way that looked effortless but probably cost more than Rosa's monthly rent. He had the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers, all sharp jawline and intense eyes, with just enough stubble to keep him from looking too polished. "Sit anywhere," Rosa called out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. She tried not to stare as he chose a booth near the window, settling into the cracked vinyl seat with a grace that seemed out of place against the faded red upholstery. She grabbed a menu and a glass of water, making her way over to him. Up close, he was even more striking, and she felt suddenly self-conscious about the coffee stain on her uniform shirt. "Welcome to Maple Ridge Diner. What can I get you?" She set the water down, trying to sound professional despite the fact that her pulse had kicked up a notch. He looked up at her, and for just a moment something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or interest. Then it was gone, replaced by a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Coffee, please, black, and what do you recommend?" His voice was deep, smooth, with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about whether your credit card would decline. Rosa thought for a moment. "The meatloaf is good, homemade, or if you want breakfast all day, the pancakes are the best in 3 counties. That's not me bragging, that's just fact. This time his smile was real, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "I'll take the pancakes and the coffee. Coming right up." She turned to go, then hesitated. "You lost," he raised an eyebrow. "What makes you think that?" "Because nobody who dresses like that ends up in Maple Ridge unless they took a very wrong turn somewhere around Chicago." He laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. "Fair observation. My car broke down about a mile back. I walked here while I wait for a tow truck." "Well, you picked the right place. Only place, really, but still the right one." Rosa grinned and headed back to the kitchen, feeling his eyes on her as she walked away. She put his order in with Marge, the cook who'd been working at the diner since before Rosa was born, and poured a cup of coffee. Her hands were steadier than she expected as she brought it back to him. "Your pancakes will be up in a few minutes." She set the cup down carefully. "Thank you." He wrapped his hands around the mug, and she noticed he wasn't wearing a wedding ring. Not that it mattered. Men like him didn't end up with women like her. That was just reality. "I'm Rosa, by the way. Rosa Finch, born and raised right here in Maple Ridge, population 2,000 and some change." "Felix Devereux." He extended his hand, and when she shook it, his grip was firm and warm. "From New York. I knew it. Had to be New York or LA, and you don't have that California vibe." She found herself lingering by his table even though there was nothing keeping her there except her own curiosity. "So what brings you to our neck of the woods, Felix from New York? Besides car trouble." He hesitated, and she could see him weighing how much to tell her. "Business meeting in Milwaukee. I was taking the scenic route." "Well, you definitely found scenic, though honestly, the view's better about 20 miles north near the lake. Maybe you could show me sometime." The words hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Rosa felt her cheeks warm. "Maybe I could if you're sticking around that long." "Order up." Marge's voice cut through the moment and Rosa jumped slightly. "That's you." She went to grab his pancakes, her mind racing. Was he flirting with her? Men like Felix Devereux didn't flirt with small-town waitresses. Did they? She set the plate in front of him with a flourish. "Best pancakes in 3 counties, as promised. Real maple syrup, none of that fake stuff." He cut into the stack, took a bite, and his eyes widened slightly. "These are incredible. Told you." Rosa felt an absurd amount of pride, even though she hadn't made them herself. Marge has been perfecting that recipe for 30 years. She should have walked away then, should have let him eat in peace, but instead she found herself sliding into the seat across from him. "So, business meeting in Milwaukee. What kind of business?" Felix swallowed another bite of pancake. "Acquisitions, mostly." "I'm looking at purchasing a manufacturing plant." "What kind of manufacturing?" "Industrial equipment." Not very exciting dinner conversation. Rosa leaned forward, resting her chin in her hand. "Who says this is dinner conversation? It's barely mid-afternoon, and I'm genuinely curious." "What do you do with an industrial equipment plant once you buy it?" He studied her for a moment, as if trying to figure out if she was serious. "Usually improve efficiency, update equipment, sometimes restructure the workforce. Then either keep it as part of a larger portfolio or sell it for profit." "So you're like a professional company flipper." He laughed again, and Rosa decided she liked that sound. "I suppose that's one way to put it, though my board of directors might prefer more corporate terminology." "You have a board of directors?" She tried to keep her tone light, but something was clicking into place in her mind. "What exactly do you do, Felix?" "I run a private equity firm, Devereux Capital." The name meant nothing to Rosa, but the way he said it suggested it should. "Is that a big deal?" "It's fairly significant in certain circles." She had a feeling that was an understatement. "So you're rich." "I do well for myself." "That suit probably cost more than my car." He looked down at his suit, then back at her, a hint of embarrassment crossing his features. "Probably." Rosa sat back, processing this information. She should have felt intimidated, should have excused herself and gone back to wiping down counters. Instead, she felt oddly comfortable, like they were just 2 people having a conversation, not a waitress and a man who probably flew first class everywhere. "Well, rich or not, you've got syrup on your tie." Felix looked down in alarm and she laughed. "Kidding, but you should probably loosen it. This is Maple Ridge, not Wall Street. You're making the locals nervous." He glanced around the nearly empty diner. "I don't see any locals. Pete's been watching you since you walked in. He's probably trying to figure out if you're a tax auditor." Felix turned to look at old Pete, who quickly buried his face in his newspaper. When Felix turned back, he was grinning. "Point taken." He loosened his tie, then removed it entirely, tucking it into his jacket pocket. He unbuttoned the top button of his shirt, and somehow the gesture made him look more approachable, more human. "Better?" he asked. "Much." Rosa glanced at the clock on the wall. "How long did they say the tow truck would be?" "Another hour at least." Apparently Wednesday afternoon is prime towing time in these parts. It's not, actually. Harry's probably just moving slow because that's how Harry moves. But hey, at least you've got good company and excellent pancakes while you wait. "The best company," Felix said, his voice dropping slightly, and Rosa felt that flutter in her chest again. The bell above the door chimed, and Rosa reluctantly stood as a couple of teenagers wandered in, probably looking for after-school snacks. "Duty calls. Let me know if you need anything else." She spent the next 20 minutes taking orders and refilling drinks, but she was hyper-aware of Felix's presence in the corner booth. Every time she glanced over, he was either working on his phone or watching her, and she couldn't decide which made her more nervous. When the diner cleared out again, she found herself back at his table with the coffee pot. "Refill, please." He held out his cup. "So tell me about Rosa Finch, born and raised in Maple Ridge. What's your story?" She poured the coffee, considering her answer. "Not much to tell. Grew up here, went to the community college one town over, studied hospitality management because I thought maybe I'd open my own restaurant someday. Then my dad got sick, and I came back to help take care of him. He passed 2 years ago. I'm sorry." The sympathy in his voice sounded genuine, not the automatic platitude most people offered. "Thanks. Mom moved to Florida after, said she'd spent enough winters in Wisconsin. Can't say I blame her, so now it's just me working at the diner, living in my childhood home, living the dream." She meant it as a joke, but it came out more bitter than she intended. Felix must have heard it too because his expression softened. "Is that what you want? Your own restaurant?" Rosa shrugged. "Maybe. Probably. I don't know. It's a big risk, and I'm not exactly swimming in startup capital. Plus, Maple Ridge is small. Not sure it could support another restaurant, but I've got notebooks full of recipes and menu ideas and this whole vision for a place that's cozy and modern at the same time, you know? Like keeping the small town feel but elevating it." She stopped, embarrassed. "Sorry. You probably don't care about my pie-in-the-sky dreams." "I do, actually." Felix leaned forward, his expression intent. "That's how every successful business starts, with someone's vision. You'd be surprised how many of the companies I acquire began with someone like you, sitting in a place like this, dreaming about what could be." "Yeah, but they actually did something about it. I'm just a waitress with a notebook." "You're 25, maybe 26. You have time." 27. And time moves differently in small towns. Everyone I went to high school with is already married with kids, and I'm still figuring out what I want to be when I grow up. "I'm 33, and I'm still figuring that out too," Felix said quietly. Rosa studied him, this man in his expensive suit who probably had more money than everyone in Maple Ridge combined. "Somehow I doubt that. You seem pretty figured out to me. Having success doesn't mean having answers. Sometimes it just means you're good at hiding the questions." Before Rosa could respond, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. "Your tow truck's here. Harry just texted that he's outside." Felix looked almost disappointed. "I should go then." "Yeah, you should." But neither of them moved. Finally, Felix stood, pulling out his wallet. Rosa waved him off. "It's on the house. Welcome to Maple Ridge hospitality." "I can't let you do that." "Sure you can. Consider it a small-town tradition. Besides, you overpaid just by being entertainment for the afternoon." He smiled, but he still pulled out several bills and left them on the table. "Then consider this a tip for the excellent service and even better conversation." Rosa glanced down and felt her eyes widen. He'd left $200. "Felix, that's way too much. It's not nearly enough." He was already heading for the door. Then he paused, turning back. "Rosa, can I see you again? Maybe take you to dinner. A real dinner, not pancakes at 2 in the afternoon." Her heart was doing acrobatics in her chest. "You're going back to New York." "Not until tomorrow. And even then, Milwaukee's only a few hours away. I could come back this weekend." Every practical bone in her body was screaming that this was a terrible idea. That men like Felix Devereux didn't date women like her, that this was probably just him being charming, that she'd get her heart broken. But the words that came out of her mouth were, "Yes, I'd like that." His smile could have lit up the entire diner. "What time do you get off work?" 6. "I'll pick you up. What's your address?" she told him, still half convinced this wasn't really happening. Felix typed it into his phone, then headed out the door with a wave. Through the window, she watched him walk to where Harry's tow truck was waiting, his stride confident even in a town where he was completely out of place. Marge poked her head out of the kitchen. "Was that who I think it was?" Rosa turned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Rosa, honey, that was Felix Devereux. His face is in business magazines. He's a billionaire." The word hit Rosa like cold water. "Not millionaire, billionaire with a B." "You're joking." "Not even a little bit. My nephew works in finance in Chicago, always sending me articles about the big players. Devereux is huge, like billions with an S, huge." Rosa sank onto the nearest stool, her legs suddenly unsteady. "He asked me to dinner, and you said?" "Yes, I said yes." "Marge, what was I thinking?" "He's a billionaire. I'm a waitress in Maple Ridge, Wisconsin. This is insane." Marge came around the counter and put a weathered hand on Rosa's shoulder. "This is a man who looked at you like you hung the moon, money or no money. You go to that dinner, and you let yourself have something good for once. You deserve it." Rosa wanted to believe her. She spent the rest of her shift in a daze, mechanically taking orders and clearing tables while her mind spun in circles. Why would someone like Felix Devereux be interested in her? Was this just some rich guy slumming it with a small-town girl for kicks? But then she remembered the way he'd looked at her, really looked at her, like she was worth paying attention to. The way he'd listened when she talked about her dreams, not dismissively but with genuine interest. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, Rosa had changed her mind approximately 17 times about whether this was the best or worst decision of her life. She clocked out, said goodbye to Marge, and stepped outside into the warm June evening. A sleek black car was parked at the curb. Not the broken-down vehicle Felix had mentioned earlier. This one looked like it cost more than Rosa's house. Felix was leaning against it, and he'd changed out of the suit into dark jeans and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked more relaxed, more approachable, but no less devastating. "Hi," he said as she approached. "Hi yourself. Fancy wheels." "The rental company delivered it after Harry towed my car to the shop. Apparently there's a wire issue that won't be fixed until tomorrow." He opened the passenger door for her. "You look beautiful, by the way." Rosa had gone home during her break to change, trading her uniform for a simple green sundress and sandals. Nothing fancy, but it was the best she could do on short notice. "Thanks. You clean up nice too." "Very casual billionaire." Felix winced slightly as he closed her door and walked around to the driver's side. "Marge told you." "Marge told me. Were you planning to mention it?" He started the car, his hands tense on the steering wheel. "Eventually. I liked that you didn't know. That you were talking to me like I was just a normal person." Rosa considered this. "You are just a normal person. You just happen to have an abnormal amount of money. Most people don't see it that way." "I'm not most people." He glanced over at her, and she saw relief in his eyes. "No, you're definitely not." They drove out of Maple Ridge, heading toward the lake Rosa had mentioned earlier. Felix seemed to relax as they left town behind, and soon they were talking as easily as they had in the diner. He told her about growing up in Connecticut, the son of parents who expected him to take over the family law firm. Instead, he'd gone into finance, started his own company at 25 with money he'd earned working brutal hours at an investment bank. "My father didn't speak to me for 2 years, Felix said, his eyes on the winding road. "He thought I was throwing away a perfectly good legacy for something risky and foolish. But you proved him wrong." "I did. Not that it made him any prouder. He passed away 5 years ago, still thinking I should have been a lawyer." Rosa heard the pain beneath his words. "I'm sorry, that must have been hard." "It was. Still is sometimes. My mother and I are close now, though. She lives in the Hamptons, spends her days painting and hosting charity events. She's happy. That's good. What about siblings? One sister younger. She's a doctor in Boston, married to another doctor. They have a 2-year-old daughter who's already smarter than both of us combined. Rosa smiled. You're an uncle, that's sweet. Uncle Felix at her service, though I don't get to see her nearly as often as I'd like. Work keeps me busy. All those companies to flip, Rosa teased. Exactly. Felix pulled into a parking area overlooking the lake. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the water in shades of gold and orange. Is this the view you meant? This is it. Best spot in the county. They got out of the car and Felix retrieved a picnic basket from the trunk. Rosa raised her eyebrows. You came prepared. I called ahead to a restaurant in the next town over. They packed this up for me. He spread a blanket on the grass, and they settled down with the lake stretching out before them. The basket contained gourmet sandwiches, fresh fruit, cheese, and a bottle of wine. It was thoughtful and romantic, and Rosa felt herself falling a little bit despite all her reservations. This is really nice, Felix. I'm glad you think so. I wasn't sure if it was too much or not enough. Dating isn't exactly my strong suit. What billionaires don't date? This billionaire doesn't, or didn't, or hasn't in a long time. He poured wine into 2 plastic glasses. Work takes up most of my time, and when I do meet someone, it's usually at some function or event, and I can never tell if they're interested in me or the portfolio. Rosa accepted the wine, taking a sip. That sounds lonely. It is. I didn't realize how lonely until I walked into a diner in the middle of nowhere and met someone who treated me like a regular person who just needed good pancakes and conversation. You didn't need good pancakes. You practically inhaled them. Felix laughed. I was hungrier than I thought, or maybe they were just that good. They ate and talked as the sun continued its descent. Felix asked about her life in Maple Ridge, and Rosa found herself telling him things she hadn't shared with anyone. About how much she missed her father, how guilty she sometimes felt that she wasn't doing more with her life. About her fear that if she didn't leave this town soon, she never would. So why don't you leave? Felix asked gently. Because it's scary. Because this is home. Because starting over somewhere new alone feels impossible. She paused, then added quietly, because I'm afraid I'll fail. Failing isn't the worst thing that can happen. Never trying is worse. Easy to say when you're already successful. I've failed plenty of times, Rosa. I've made investments that tanked, hired people who betrayed my trust, made decisions that cost millions of dollars. The difference is I kept going anyway. Rosa looked at him. This man who seemed so far removed from her world but who somehow understood her anyway. Why do you care? You just met me. Felix set down his wine glass and turned to face her fully. Because in the 3 hours I've known you, you've made me laugh more than I have in months. Because you're brilliant and creative and you have no idea how remarkable you are. Because when I'm with you, I don't feel like Felix Devereux, CEO. I just feel like Felix. Her breath caught in her throat. Felix. I know this is fast. I know it's crazy, but I like you, Rosa, really like you, and I want to see where this goes if you'll let me. She should say no. Should protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak when this fairy tale ended. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, she couldn't make herself walk away. Okay, she whispered. Let's see where it goes. Felix smiled and leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. He tasted like wine and possibility, and Rosa felt like she was falling off a cliff in the best possible way. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, the last of the sunlight was fading from the sky. We should probably head back, Felix said reluctantly. I don't want you to turn into a pumpkin. That's the carriage, not Cinderella. Either way, I should get you home. They packed up the picnic and drove back to Maple Ridge in comfortable silence, Felix's hand finding hers on the console between them. When he pulled up in front of her house, a modest two-story with a wraparound porch, Rosa was surprised to find she didn't want the evening to end. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "It was perfect. Thank you for saying yes." Felix squeezed her hand. "Can I see you tomorrow before I leave for New York? I work until 3. I'll come by the diner. Maybe I'll even order something besides pancakes." Rosa laughed and leaned over to kiss him one more time. "You'd better. Marge makes a mean pot roast on Thursdays." She got out of the car and walked to her door, feeling his eyes on her the whole way. When she turned to wave, he was still sitting there, watching her with an expression that made her heart flutter all over again. Inside, Rosa leaned against the closed door and let out a long breath. What had she just gotten herself into? Over the next 2 months, Rosa found out exactly what she'd gotten into. It turned out that dating a billionaire involved a lot of phone calls, video chats, and Felix making the drive from New York to Maple Ridge more weekends than seemed reasonable for a man who ran a multi-billion-dollar company. He came to the diner so often that Marge started setting aside the corner booth for him. He met Rosa's friends, charmed them all without trying, and didn't bat an eye when her best friend Sophie interrogated him about his intentions. He even won over old Pete by listening to his stories about serving in Vietnam and never once checking his phone. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. 3 weeks in, they had their first real argument. Felix wanted to fly Rosa to New York for the weekend, first class, put her up in his penthouse apartment. Rosa refused, uncomfortable with the extravagance. "I don't want to be some kept woman," she said, her voice tight. They were sitting in his rental car outside her house, the tension thick between them. "That's not what I'm suggesting. I want you to see my life, Rosa, to be part of it. Your life involves private jets and penthouses and a world I don't belong in. You belong wherever you want to be." Felix's voice was frustrated. "Why are you so determined to keep us in separate boxes?" "Because that's reality. You're a billionaire, Felix. I'm a waitress. Eventually, you're going to realize that I don't fit into your world and this is going to end and I need to protect myself from that. Or maybe I've already realized that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me and I'm terrified that you're looking for reasons to push me away." His words hung in the air between them. Rosa felt tears prickling at her eyes. "I'm scared. I know." Felix reached for her hand. "I'm scared too. This matters, Rosa. You matter. More than anything has mattered in a very long time, so please stop sabotaging us before we even have a chance." She let him pull her across the console into an awkward hug, breathing in his familiar scent. "I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just trust me. Trust us." After that, things got easier. Rosa agreed to visit New York, and while the penthouse did intimidate her at first, Felix made her feel comfortable there. He cooked dinner for her in his state-of-the-art kitchen, and they ate takeout Thai food on his balcony overlooking the city. He took her to his favorite hole-in-the-wall bookstore and a jazz club in the village. He showed her his office, introduced her to his assistant Patricia, who clearly adored him. And Rosa started to see that Felix was the same person whether he was in a boardroom or in Maple Ridge. She also started to see the pressure he was under. The constant phone calls, the meetings that ran until midnight, the weight of decisions that affected thousands of employees. One night, she found him on the balcony at 2 in the morning staring out at the city lights. "Can't sleep?" she asked, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the night air. "I have to fire 300 people tomorrow. We're closing a factory in Ohio that's not profitable anymore. It's the right business decision, but that doesn't make it any easier." Rosa moved to stand beside him. "Is there any other option?" Not any good ones. We've tried restructuring, updating equipment, everything we can think of, but the numbers don't lie. He rubbed his face tiredly. 300 families are going to wake up tomorrow with their lives changed, and it's because of me. It's because of economics and market forces and 100 other things that aren't your fault. It's my name on the decision, my signature on the papers. Rosa didn't have easy answers for him. Instead, she wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "You're a good man, Felix. You wouldn't be losing sleep over this if you weren't." He turned in her arms, holding her close. "What did I do to deserve you?" Walked into the right diner on the right day. He kissed her then, deep and slow, and Rosa felt the shift in their relationship. This wasn't just attraction or novelty anymore. This was real, and it was serious, and it was terrifying in all the best ways. By the time autumn arrived, they'd fallen into a rhythm. Felix came to Maple Ridge every other weekend, and Rosa went to New York on the alternating ones. They talked every night, sometimes for hours, sometimes just for a few minutes before Felix had to jump into another meeting. Rosa learned about hostile takeovers and quarterly reports, while Felix learned about the intricacies of running a small-town diner and Rosa's evolving plans for her dream restaurant. In October, Felix did something that changed everything. He arranged for Rosa to meet with a restaurant consultant in Milwaukee, someone he knew professionally. Rosa went nervously, clutching her notebooks full of ideas, expecting to be told her dreams were unrealistic. Instead, the consultant, a woman named Deanne, spent 3 hours going through Rosa's plans with genuine enthusiasm. "You have a solid concept here," Deanne said. "With the right backing and location, this could really work." "I don't have backing. I have about 15,000 in savings." "What if you did have backing? What would you do?" Rosa spent the drive back to Maple Ridge thinking about that question. When Felix called that night, she couldn't hold it in anymore. "Did you set that meeting up to show me I could actually do this?" There was a pause. "Maybe. Did it work?" "Felix, I can't let you fund my restaurant. I'm not offering to, but I know people who invest in startups. I could make introductions. Because you're my boyfriend. Because you have a good business plan and the talent to back it up. Rosa, I believe in you. Why won't you believe in yourself?" She thought about that for a long time after they hung up. Why wouldn't she believe in herself? What was she so afraid of? The answer came to her in the middle of a busy Friday lunch rush. She was taking orders, pouring coffee, moving through the familiar routine she'd done thousands of times when it hit her. This was safe. This was comfortable. This required nothing from her except showing up and doing what she already knew how to do. But safe and comfortable weren't the same as happy. That weekend, when Felix came to visit, Rosa had news. "I've been looking at properties. There's a space available on Main Street, used to be a hardware store. It needs work, but the bones are good." Felix's eyes lit up. "You're serious?" "I'm terrified. But yeah, I'm serious. I want to do this." He picked her up and spun her around right there in her living room, both of them laughing. "I'm so proud of you. I haven't done anything yet. You made the decision. That's the hardest part." Over the next few months, Rosa dove headfirst into making her restaurant a reality. She met with contractors, designed menus, and worked with a small business loan officer at the local bank. Felix helped where she let him, offering advice but never pushing, respecting her need to do this herself. In December, Felix asked her to come to New York for Christmas. "My mother wants to meet you. She's been asking for months." Rosa's stomach dropped. "Your mother, the society woman who lives in the Hamptons. She's just a person, Rosa. A person who's heard me talk about you constantly, and wants to meet the woman who's made me happier than I've been in years." So Rosa found herself on a train to the Hamptons 2 days before Christmas. carrying a suitcase full of borrowed dressy clothes and a stomach full of nerves. Felix met her at the station, looking handsome in a heavy coat and scarf. "She's going to love you," he assured her as they drove through the pristine streets lined with houses that looked like they belonged in architectural magazines. "How can you be sure?" "Because I love you and she wants me to be happy." Rosa's heart stopped. "What?" Felix pulled the car over, turning to face her. "I love you, Rosa. I've been in love with you since you made fun of my tie in that diner. I know this is fast and I know it's complicated, but it's true." Tears were streaming down Rosa's face. "I love you too. I've been afraid to say it because what if this all falls apart?" "Then it falls apart and we'll deal with it. But I'd rather have us, and risk getting hurt than not have you at all." He reached over and wiped her tears with his thumb. "So what do you say? Want to meet my mother?" Rosa laughed through her tears. "Now, when I'm all splotchy from crying. Now, when you're perfect." Felix's mother, Felix Devereux, turned out to be nothing like Rosa expected. She was warm and funny, with paint-stained fingers and a genuine smile. She hugged Rosa like they were old friends and spent the evening showing Rosa her studio and asking thoughtful questions about the restaurant. "Felix tells me you're opening in spring," Felix said over dinner that night. "I'd love to come to the opening if you'd have me. You'd really come all the way to Wisconsin for my son's happiness." "Absolutely." Felix looked meaningfully at Felix, who suddenly became very interested in his wine glass. "I haven't seen him like this ever." "You're good for him, Rosa." That night, lying in Felix's arms in his childhood bedroom filled with boarding school trophies and old textbooks, Rosa felt like maybe, just maybe, this could really work. The spring opening of Finch's Table was everything Rosa had dreamed of and more. The space on Main Street had been transformed into a cozy, modern restaurant that perfectly captured her vision. Local ingredients, elevated comfort food, and an atmosphere that made people want to linger over dessert and coffee. Felix was there, of course, along with Felix and half the town of Maple Ridge. Marge cried happy tears and told anyone who would listen that she always knew Rosa would do something special. Old Pete claimed the best seat in the house and became a regular before the doors even officially opened. The restaurant was a success from day one. Rosa had to hire additional staff within the first month, and reservations became necessary for weekend dinners. Food bloggers from Milwaukee and even Chicago started making the drive to Maple Ridge, writing glowing reviews about the talented chef who was putting small-town Wisconsin on the culinary map. Through it all, Felix was her biggest supporter and her safe place to land when the stress became too much. He flew in for the opening night, gave a toast that made her cry happy tears, and stayed up until 3 in the morning helping her clean up after the last guests left. "You did it," he said, pulling her into his arms in the empty restaurant. "You really did it." "We did it," she corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you. You could have. But I'm glad I got to be part of it." In June, exactly 1 year after they met, Felix came to Maple Ridge with a plan. He took Rosa back to the lake where they'd had their first date, spread out the same blanket, and unpacked another picnic basket. "This feels familiar," Rosa teased. "That's the idea." Felix seemed nervous, fidgeting with his wine glass. "This past year with you has been the best year of my life. You've challenged me, changed me, made me want to be better. You've shown me what really matters." "Felix, what are you doing?" He set down his glass and got down on one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "I'm asking you to marry me. I know your life is here and mine is in New York, and we'll have to figure out the logistics. But I know I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Rosa Finch. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night." I want to be there for your restaurant success and be there when things are hard. I want to build a life together wherever that looks like. So, will you marry me?" Rosa was crying again, but this time they were pure tears of joy. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." The ring was beautiful, a simple, elegant diamond that caught the sunlight like a promise. Felix slipped it onto her finger and kissed her deeply, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. They got married in September in a ceremony that perfectly blended their two worlds. The ceremony was at the church in Maple Ridge, where Rosa had been baptized, followed by a reception at Finch's table. Eleanor helped plan, making sure every detail was perfect while never overshadowing what Rosa wanted. Felix wore a tuxedo, Rosa wore a simple lace dress, and when they exchanged vows in front of everyone who mattered, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I promise to always treat you like the remarkable woman you are," Felix said, his voice thick with emotion. "To support your dreams and celebrate your successes, to be your partner in every way that matters. I promise to always keep you grounded," Rosa said through happy tears. "To remind you what really matters when the world gets too loud, to love you not for what you have, but for who you are." They honeymooned in Italy. 2 weeks of amazing food and beautiful scenery and lazy mornings in bed. Felix taught Rosa phrases in Italian, and Rosa made him try every local restaurant they could find. It was perfect. When they returned, they had decisions to make about their future. Felix had been looking into opening a second office for Devereux Capital in Milwaukee, closer to Rosa and the restaurant. "I can run the company from anywhere," he explained, "and I'd rather be here with you than in New York missing you." "You'd really do that? Move to Wisconsin?" "I'd move anywhere for you. Besides, I've grown fond of small-town life. It's peaceful in a way the city never is." They bought a house together, a beautiful old Victorian on the edge of Maple Ridge that they filled with books and art and laughter. Felix worked from a home office most days, traveling to New York when necessary, but always coming back to Rosa. Finch's table continued to thrive. Rosa opened for lunch service, then added weekend brunch that became legendary in 3 counties. Food magazines came calling, wanting features and recipes. Rosa hired Marge as a special consultant, making sure the woman who taught her so much got to be part of the success. 2 years after their wedding, on a quiet Sunday morning in their kitchen, Rosa had news. She'd been feeling strange for weeks, tired and nauseous, and she'd finally taken a test that confirmed what she suspected. "Felix, I'm pregnant." He dropped the spatula he'd been using to make pancakes, their weekend tradition. "You're serious?" 3 tests worth of serious. He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet. "We're having a baby." "Rosa, we're having a baby." "Apparently my business plan included expansion," she joked, and he laughed, kissing her soundly. Their daughter, Lily Eleanor Devereux, was born the following spring on a perfect April morning. She had Felix's dark hair and Rosa's smile, and she was absolutely perfect. Eleanor flew in from New York to stay for a month, helping with night feedings and cooking meals and crying happy tears every time she held her granddaughter. Felix was a natural father, patient and gentle, and completely devoted. Rosa would often wake in the middle of the night to find him standing over Lily's crib, just watching her sleep with an expression of pure wonder on his face. "What are you thinking about?" Rosa asked one night, coming to stand beside him. "How lucky I am. How my car breaking down in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, was the best thing that ever happened to me. Technically, walking into the right diner was the best thing that ever happened to you. Fair point." He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think fate knew exactly what it was doing that day, bringing me to you. giving us this." Rosa looked down at their sleeping daughter, then up at her husband, the man who'd seen past her insecurities and loved her anyway. The man who'd supported her dreams and built a life with her that was better than anything she could have imagined. "I think fate knew what it was doing too," she agreed. Years passed in a beautiful blur. Finch's table became a destination restaurant, written up in national magazines and winning awards. Felix's Milwaukee office thrived, and he was able to spend more time at home, being present for all the important moments. Lily grew into a bright, curious child who loved helping her mother in the restaurant kitchen and listening to her father's stories about business adventures. When Lily was 5, they had a son, Thomas Felix Devereux, who had Rosa's blonde hair and a smile that could charm anyone. Their house was full of noise and laughter, and the beautiful chaos of a growing family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Felix took Rosa back to the lake where he'd proposed. They left the kids with Alina, who'd bought a summer house nearby so she could be close to her grandchildren, and spent the evening just the two of them. 10 years, Rosa marveled, leaning against Felix's shoulder as they watched the sunset. "Can you believe it? Best 10 years of my life. And I plan for the next 10 to be even better. That's a pretty big promise. I'm a pretty ambitious guy." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you, Rosa." "For what?" "For saying yes when I walked into your diner, for taking a chance on me, for building this life with me." Rosa turned to face him, cupping his cheek with her hand. "Thank you for seeing me, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, for loving me enough to change your whole life. Loving you was the easiest thing I've ever done." They kissed as the sun set over the water. Two people from completely different worlds who'd found their way to each other against all odds. The small-town girl who dreamed of more and the billionaire who'd been looking for something real had created something beautiful together. Later that night, lying in bed in their home surrounded by the life they'd built, Rosa thought about that June afternoon 10 years ago when a stranger in an expensive suit had walked through the diner door. She'd had no idea that her entire life was about to change, that the man she'd served pancakes would become her husband, her partner, her everything. "What are you smiling about?" Felix asked, pulling her closer. "Just thinking about how that broken-down car was the best thing that ever happened to both of us. The best thing that ever happened to me was you, Rosa. The car just gave me the excuse to find you." As she drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, Rosa silently thanked fate, or luck, or whatever force had brought them together. She'd found her happily ever after with the billionaire who'd seen past her small-town exterior to the woman with big dreams underneath. And together, they'd built something that no amount of money could buy. A real, lasting love that would carry them through whatever came next. Their story wasn't about a small-town girl being rescued by a rich man. It was about two people recognizing something special in each other and having the courage to reach for it. It was about supporting each other's dreams, compromising without sacrificing, and building a partnership based on respect and genuine love. And it was about understanding that home isn't a place or a bank account balance. Home is wherever the person you love is waiting for you at the end of the day, ready to share in your triumphs and support you through your struggles. For Rosa and Felix, home was Maple Ridge, and their house full of children and laughter, and quiet mornings making pancakes together while their kids slept upstairs. It was Alina visiting for holidays and Marge teaching Lily family recipes, and old Pete telling Thomas exaggerated stories about the old days. It was a life neither of them had expected but both of them cherished. A life that started with a chance encounter and grew into forever. A life that proved that sometimes, when you least expect it, love walks through the door and changes everything.